And we're live. It is Friday, May 20th, 5:05 p.m. Eastern Time. Minna, you are now understanding how even after 637 episodes of In Lieu of Fun, we still have tech problems because we have no producers and no type of real organization besides me and Ben to basically organize this entire thing. We're working on that. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks we'll have a solution. Ben is getting headphones and we're going to be okay in a second. But Minna, thank you so much for joining us. So you are a research fellow at an institute that I've never heard of. So you'll have to forgive me, but can you explain what it is exactly that research institute does and where your area of expertise comes from?
First of all, thanks a lot for inviting me tonight. It's 12 a.m. in Finland right now. Ben promised you that it will be still daylight, but unfortunately it's not a sunny night today. Also, we're still like a month to go till midsummer, so actually the sun still does go down right now.
So when did it go down and when does it come up?
Just some minutes ago, I think, or maybe half an hour ago, and it comes back up like at 2:30 or 3 a.m. So this is the only time of the night.
Yeah, we're taking away your entire night here.
Exactly.
But Ben, I'm really, really sorry about this, but for 1 second, Ben, can we have a conversation about the fact that when I visited in Sweden, my relatives in Sweden in June of 2018, that I experienced this for the first time, and it is truly insane. It is actually very hard as a person who is used to kind of a semi-normal, not normal, but in the bandwidth of kind of where most people in the world live type of organization of your life around having a sense from looking outside and being able to understand what time of day it is, how bizarre it is to actually have this all the time. I mean, I really found it to be I don't know. I really wonder if there isn't some type of neurological and cultural kind of shift in the psyche from having
totally
right?
That's what makes the Finns so weird, right? It's very extreme.
I mean, I wasn't going to say that, but are you allowed to say that?
Of course. The Finnish humor is very black, very self-ironic. So just go ahead. Basically, these extreme climatic conditions make us the way we are, next to the geopolitical conditions under which we live. So I mean, especially at the Arctic Circle, from where I'm speaking right now, we have the polar night and the polar day, and right now we're going towards the polar day when the sun doesn't go down, and during the winter it's tough as well because the sun comes up for only a couple of hours. On the other hand, we have so much snow that it makes it less depressing, and there are all kinds of pastel colors on the sky when it's light. So, but I totally diverted from your question. I'm sorry.
No, you didn't. This was amazing. I actually just it's actually kind of just. Sorry, we don't have any agenda ever on In Lieu of Fun.
Well, we do today.
Yeah.
So you are at a German think tank.
Exactly.
You have a Swedish name, and you're Finnish.
Exactly.
Cool.
It's very confusing.
That's so great.
Exactly. So I've been living and working. I was first studying in Germany, and then I've just ended up kind of staying there. Don't ask why, I don't know either. But I've been there for 10 years now, and I'm working at the German Institute for International and Security Affairs in Berlin, in the EU and Europe Research Division. Actually, as a research assistant still, but somehow now that all this Finland, Sweden, NATO topic kind of fell into my lap. That's basically the reason why I'm doing this now, because I happen to have the language skills needed to follow the debates in both countries. Yeah.
So you have Swedish, I take it, as well as Finnish.
Yeah, Swedish is actually the second official language of Finland, because we used to be a part of Sweden, the Swedish kingdom, for several hundred years, before becoming a part of Russia and then finally gaining independence. So there's a lot of history there with both neighbors, and we have a very sizable Swedish-speaking minority in Finland. So we all have to learn Swedish, like whether we like it or not.
And are you part of the Swedish-speaking minority? Is that why you have a Swedish name?
Actually, no, and it's also totally unrelated to the Åland Islands. That actually, like, I mean, it means someone from the Åland Islands, but I have never been there actually yet.
Interesting. I just assumed you were an Ålander.
How do you pronounce the A with the umlaut, with the circle over it?
Yeah, it's the circle kind of like hints at it being actually an O. That's the Swedish O. So yeah,
okay.
Because the Swedes pronounce the O in a weird way. So yeah.
Very cool.
So are you living now back up in your hometown, or are you just there visiting?
I'm just visiting here right now, so I'm still in Berlin, like normally. I
Gotcha.
would be there. Yeah.
All right. So we have big news.
Wait. First, before we do this, can I just, Minna, I'm going to be in Hamburg in a couple of weeks. Do you want to come and hang out with me and talk
When exactly are you gonna be there?
I'll like text you the exact dates, but like, yeah. Anyways, maybe it would be fun. Sorry. Maybe it'd be fun
sure.
to hang
Like
out.
I would love to. Like if I'll be in Germany at the time, I have some other gigs coming up as well. But
cool.
Do let me know.
We'll text about it. Sorry, Ben. Okay,
sure.
So there has.
Which dog shirt is it today, by the way, Ben?
It is the Mastiff shirt day.
Mastiff shirt day. Okay.
Yeah. So there has been. I don't know. It's kind of like once every 3 generation news now. The two of the most famously non-aligned countries are now petitioning for NATO membership, and you guys are not going to have any gas as of tomorrow. Although you told me not that nobody's worried about it or panicking. So the first question I have,
but literally not gas. Like it's not like just gas for like the gas for like the thing. It's like a literal like where you're not going to have petroleum.
No, natural gas.
No natural gas, yeah. And just Russian natural gas. We will have other sources, of course.
I just want to like point out for everyone who's going to say this in the comments that I did know that that's what Ben was saying, but I was trying to make a joke on the pun of you're going to run out of gas for your bid for NATO. So like, anyway, sorry.
I see. I didn't get that. So first of all, give us a sense of Finnish-Russian relations at this point. There was some anxiety earlier on about Finland as a possible area of escalation on the part of the Russians. This does not seem to be happening. How do you understand the Russian posture toward Finland right now?
Well, basically, of course, the Finnish-Russian relations have absolutely hit rock bottom, but that has nothing to do with the Finnish NATO membership bid. It has to do with the Russian war of aggression in Ukraine. So that's the sole reason. That's also like that's basically the correct line of reasoning that first Russia attacked Ukraine, and subsequently Finland decided to like obviously cut ties and to join NATO. So basically, Finland joining NATO is a consequence, not a reason for the current kind of entirely cutting ties between the two countries. I think that the people who were most anxious about Finland becoming like a playground of Russian aggression over this NATO bid were like not Finns, because we have kind of like a fairly good idea of what our eastern neighbor is capable of and how we should be prepared. So basically, also Russia already, like 1 week ago, Russia already cut off the electricity supply to Finland, the exports that were going to Finland. That
Your lights are still on.
Yeah, exactly. My lights are still on, and it was not a problem because
you have better internet than I do at the moment.
Exactly. So as you can see, like life continues, and no one's panicking. Everyone's like sleeping peacefully, except for myself. So basically, the electricity thing wasn't a big deal because Finland only imported like around 10% of the whole electricity consumption from Russia, and basically, it's not really exaggerated to say that Finland has been preparing for another Russian attack all its history, because we have just like a lot of history of being attacked by the Russians. So it's basically always been like a major factor in the security policy and geopolitical calculations of Finland. So Finland never like got really dependent on Russian energy in the first place. Like, of course, it is a very like temptingly cheap alternative, as the Germans very well know, but we never got ourselves into that kind of bind. So as I said, electricity was only 10%, and it has already basically, like, it was no problem to replace that from the Nordic electricity market or from the Baltics. And thanks to investments in wind energy and a new nuclear power plant, Finland is estimated to become actually self-sufficient next year already, potentially. So that was not a big deal. And the gas, natural gas, it's not a very big deal either, because it amounts to only like approximately 5% of the whole energy portfolio. So yes, of course, like natural gas is a bit more difficult to replace than, for example, electricity, because of the inflexibility of the networks. But
Or oil.
yes, exactly. Well, oil is actually also a bit easier to move
Yeah,
on the world
exactly.
markets.
Natural gas is hard.
Yeah, exactly, because it depends on the pipelines. But anyways, there are like 2 LNG terminals in Finland, and another one will open in October. We also actually, today's news was that we are getting a lease from the US for an LNG terminal ship or something. I'm not really like into the details, but that could actually work out like rather fast. I think that was one of the results of the visit of Niinistö and Anderson in the US. So everything looks quite good. Like the security of supply is anyways secured for the coming summer months, and there are some variables still that need to be figured out for the winter. But everything looks very promising that it won't be really a problem. The only problem will be the rising prices, which will be, of course, like very strongly felt in Finland. But at least so far, there's like, I mean, let's see how the situation develops until next winter. But right now, there's like a very strong solidarity with Ukraine and a very strong sense of purpose in cutting off energy ties to Russia. And the Finns are more like, no price is too high to pay for this.
So I want to ask about the psychological qualities of the NATO alignment. From a U.S. perspective, Finland is kind of a sui generis example, because people are kind of, at least people who know anything about Soviet history, have an awareness of Finland's unique situation. But there's always with respect to Sweden, there's always a kind of a puzzlement among Americans, and I'm certainly one. On the one hand, you have these 2 very stalwart Scandinavian NATO members, Denmark and Norway, and then you have sort of staunchly neutral Sweden that has kind of a sort of an active neutrality, despite not having the Finnish menace from the Soviets. Where does this Swedish commitment to neutrality come from, and how big a change is it for both Finland and Sweden to sort of look at this situation and say, no, we're actually changing 70 years of policy, or in Sweden's case, more, because it was neutral during World War II as well. Like, this seems like a big psychological shift.
Yeah, it is indeed. Like, especially for Sweden, it's actually this neutrality narrative goes back 200 years. So, and I'm calling it a narrative because, first of all, neutrality isn't really accurate anyways. It's more like non-alignment. Like, even during the Cold War, it's maybe more accurate to speak of non-alignment than neutrality. I will get back to that in a second. But basically, for Sweden, or maybe the main difference between the two countries was that for Finland, security policy and national security has always been like a very pragmatic question. Or the approach has been very pragmatic. Like, basically, whatever option maximizes Finnish security is the best, and there's not much like ideology about it. It's like this whole non-alignment was a good course until now, and now it isn't. And in this pragmatic way, the Finns decided, okay, it's time to cash in the NATO option. Maybe you've heard of this quite peculiar policy that Finland used to have, this called NATO option. It was this idea that, because basically in Finland, the NATO membership has been debated since 1995 when Finland joined the EU. And the idea of the NATO option was that, like, we keep this option open so that we can kind of like cash it in where, if, or like when shit hits the fan, because basically the expectation has always been there that it might become necessary at some point. And that's what Finland was also, and also Sweden were both like actively working towards since the 90s, with like the closest possible partnership with NATO just below the threshold of membership, so that like in case like this, that you actually need to seek membership, that it can at least go as fast as possible from our part.
It's operationally easy.
Exactly. So that has been the idea. And coming back to the Swedish case, it was more maybe a little bit of an identity crisis for Sweden because of this, as you described, this very strong like foreign policy identity or this narrative of neutrality. But basically, if you look closer, it was more of a narrative than a reality, even during the Cold War. So it has come out that Sweden actually, like, besides having had quite close partnership with or ties to the US, Sweden actually had like secret security guarantees from the US as well during the Cold War. So in that sense, again, like, if you just like kind of like look at the facts and not at this narrative and this identity, it's not such a big deal actually. So there has been this like very strong element of continuity in both cases. For Finland, it's been like, and both have like, especially since the 90s, since the end of the Cold War, both have worked towards this like closest possible partnership. So at this point, it's more of a question of formalization, really. And one important thing to know about Finland and Sweden is that these two countries always come in a pair, so you don't get one without the other. It was the same with the EU, and now it's again the same. So
Can I ask a naive question, which is like, why is it that like those two countries come in pairs versus like any of the other Scandinavian countries?
Well, I mean, the whole Nordic club is a pretty like close one. There's this Nordic defense cooperation called NORDEFCO as well, and the Nordic cooperation goes back to like started already like after the Second World War, and so that's basically like the main reference framework for all the Nordic countries. Like, it predates EU membership for the Nordic countries that are EU members, and that also kind of explains why that is always also the like primary identity, and not, for example, a European one for the Nordic countries, which is sometimes hard to understand from a like more Central or a Western European perspective, maybe. Anyways, so Sweden and Finland. I mean, Finland used to be part of Sweden for a really long time. and it was kind of like the eastern part of the kingdom, and they still sometimes like lovingly call us that we're still like the eastern half of the kingdom, which like is absolutely no hard feelings for us, because there's this like kind of like really cozy, like almost kind of like state friendship, if you can call it that. Like there's this really close coordination, like Finland and Sweden don't have, like, for example, embassies in every country of the world. So Finns and Swedes can always go to one of the embassies. Like, it doesn't really matter if it's the Swedish or the Finnish one. The Finnish heads of government and Swedish heads of government also like represent each other at the EU meetings, like if need be. So there's just a lot of history between the two countries, and also being two non-aligned countries, they have Sweden and Finland have developed a very, very close defense cooperation, defense and security cooperation as well in the past years. So,
But I was under the impression, I thought the Swedish coverage of the Finnish NATO accession was really interesting. And correct me if I understood this incorrectly, but I sort of like, so the major Swedish newspaper covered it as, you know, Finland is the big brother, joins NATO, and this is a kind of role reversal. I think role reversal joke, because Sweden, I think thinks of itself as the senior partner, and it's a much bigger economy. It's twice the population, and Finns speak Swedish, but Swedes don't speak Finnish. Is there a, you know, is there not a sort of a little bit of kind of resentment in the relationship as well?
Absolutely, of course. I mean, it's like this kind of loving resentment, I'd say. Like there's this absurd competition, which is mostly on the Finnish part, I think. There's this joke that the Finns are always like obsessing over Sweden, and the Swedes don't really care, and so that, like, you can imagine like what a like great national win it was to have that headline in Finnish and Swedish newspaper calling Finland the big brother. Like, we will never ever forget that. It was like amazing. So, and we will always come back to that with Sweden whenever they try to take the lead again, because if you look at, for example, the EU accession process, it was exactly the other way around. So Sweden was kind of like taking the lead and pulling Finland with it into the EU, and this time it was exactly the opposite. So Finland kind of hijacked their Swedish debate on NATO, and then like Sweden didn't really debate about anything else anymore, except that like whether or not they should go along with Finland to NATO, and there was this narrative,
and that's just because Finland has the 1,000-mile border with Russia and Sweden doesn't, right? It's, I mean, there's, I believe my geography is correct, there is actually no Russo-Swedish border, right?
No, not anymore.
It connects
since
in Norway on top, right?
Yeah, exactly. Since Finnish independence, or since Sweden first lost Finland to Russia, and Finland then gained independence, there hasn't been a direct border anymore. But I think it has a like kind of, I mean, it sounds maybe a bit weird because it's like goes way back, like several hundreds of years. But like the Swedish kingdom and the Empire of Russia, or different like state formations of Russia, were like all the time at war with each other, like literally all the time, like every century, like several times. And Finland, of course, as part of the Swedish kingdom. So there is still like actually this like a long history of wars between Sweden and Russia. Like not very recently, not in the past 200 years, but there is this history.
So I want to kind of bring up the fact that there was this, we had this incredible scholar talking on the show, I think back in the end of February, when all of this kind of like Russia's invasion of Ukraine happened. Constance Steisenmuller, who was speaking about Germany's dependence in energy on Russia. And so I'm kind of very interested in like how this is switched.
Did I freeze or did...
No, I think Kate froze.
Oh, no.
Kate froze mid-question. And
Damn, that's not...
So Do you have? I'm not sure I understand. I'm not sure we got enough of the question for you to address it. But do you have thoughts on the subject?
On German energy dependence on Russia. Oh yes, I have a lot of thoughts about that.
Go for it.
Well, I mean, it's been interesting to watch how this like German economic miracle and all this like the German position within Europe and within the EU has kind of like unraveled the past months. It's been quite dramatic. For example, looking at like from a Finnish perspective or a Nordic one. Is Kate back? Not yet.
I don't think so.
Okay, so now it's just the two of us. Okay, so basically, I think that's like one of the biggest differences, for example, between Finland and Germany. Like in Finland, literally everything has security policy implications. Like no matter what it is, whether it's like infrastructure, like all kinds of policies, like everything is somehow security political, or has like security policy implications. Hello.
We have Thomas Silvis here.
Nice, great.
Finish your point, and then we'll bring him in.
This is awesome. Yeah. So in Finland, everything is somehow like related to security policy, and in Germany, nothing was like literally nothing had any security policy implications in the past.
Yeah, they
20
really
years.
believed we were in a post-security
End of history. Yes.
end of history, and they acted like
Wandel
it.
durch Handel. Yes, it was like a deliberate ignorance. Yeah.
Thomas, it's great to see you. It's been a while.
Moi, as they say.
Moi. Moi, moi.
Well, occasionally I get to stay up late. For this, I stayed up.
Are you in Estonia or in Latvia?
I'm in Estonia, though Latvia is 5 hours away.
Okay.
Yeah. No,
What's on your mind?
Interesting topic for me. I had a discussion at American Purpose with Alex Stubb yesterday, and so the whole thing is obviously interesting to Estonia because basically this whole impending event means the Baltic Sea turns into a NATO lake, which is a whole different scene from what it's been since at least we joined NATO, when we were this little protrusion into the Eurasian landmass that could be cut off easily through the Suwalki corridor between Belarus and Kaliningrad. And so now suddenly these discussions that have been going on for 30 years about strategic depth of the Baltic countries become just like, who cares, right? I mean, it's our lake, Mare Nostrum.
That's true. It's going to be a big change in the Baltic Sea security architecture.
Yeah. So how does that what does that change look like realistically, Minna?
Well, basically, we're looking at a situation where we will have like 32 NATO members, of which 8 are Nordic or Baltic. That's like 1/4, and all of
including
us have,
including some of the most combat ready.
Exactly, like Finland, for example.
I mean, Finland is one of relatively few countries that has actual combat experience against the Soviet Union or Russia.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that it may mark a shift in the focus of NATO. Like, I mean, NATO is anyways like kind of returning to the roots, coming back to the roots of being like mainly a defense alliance that is there to deter Russia, if I can put it so bluntly. And now with these 2 new members, it will finally like bring coherence into the Baltic Sea security architecture, which has been very fragmented so far, which has hampered cooperation to some extent so far. And now we have like this Nordic club with this already very, very long tradition of cooperation, also very many like regional defense cooperation formats and initiatives. And I don't think that there are other like regions, NATO regions, kind of, or parts of NATO that have that kind of integration regionally. So I think that is a game changer potentially. It will, like the Nordic states and with the Baltics together, they will have like quite some say in NATO, I think, because of, I mean, of course, they won't challenge the US and nobody has an interest to, but I mean, I just mean that they bring this focus on the Baltic Sea security and High North security into NATO way more strongly than so far. So I think that will be a very interesting dynamic to watch once the accession process is through. Yeah.
Antti, for some reason I can't activate your camera, but your mic is on and the floor is yours.
Thank you, guys. Hey, Minna.
Moi moi.
So it's really great to see you here, and Thomas as well.
And Antti, just so that you know, Minna, I know about you because Antti retweeted several of your tweets at me. Antti is one of the first Finn of In Lieu of Fun. He has been with us. You've been with us almost since the beginning, right?
I think, the first. I think it was the first COVID autumn when I joined you guys.
Okay, so 6 months in, but he is. We call the regular audience who talks in the chat the Greek chorus, and Antti is a member in excellent standing of the Greek chorus, and is the reason I know about your Twitter feed.
Thanks so much, Antti. Like, this is great.
So
you're most welcome.
You have a few questions.
I did, but I would also like to, because Thomas is here, I would like to point out a small tidbit of history that, if I'm not mistaken, in the interwar period, it was the basic tenement of Estonian defense strategy that help would have to arrive by sea from the democratic allied nations, and that was also always a bit of a problem after Germany. The status of Germany changed, and now there is a potential that things will be unlike they have never been in Finnish and Estonian history, to a certain extent, at least. Yeah. Just a comment, but would you like to respond to that?
Well, before there was a history of Finnish volunteers fighting in the Estonian War of Independence 100 years ago. And then some over 2,000 Estonians were in Jalkaväe Rügementi 200, or the infantry regiment 200, which fought in the continuation war, and especially the Isthmus of Karelia, certainly where the bloodiest battles were. But then the history under Kekkonen was not so great. And
no.
Actually, I would ask a question.
It wasn't so great for us either.
Yeah, well, okay.
But Kekkonen, for those not versed in the subject, was the president of Finland in the 50s and 60s, right?
Even 70s. He canceled it in 1973.
Okay.
For 25
and even
years.
until 1981. But yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
But my question, this is your about Minna and Antti, what your impression is. I mean, one of the feelings I had about this very strong cooperation pushed for with the United States, and especially people like the former foreign minister, Tuomioja, was that actually the real sentiment was, we don't want to join NATO because, God forbid, we'd have to assist or come to the aid of those pesky Russophobes in the Baltic countries.
Antti, do you want to go first, or?
Well, I was hoping you would, but I certainly can. I mean, the thing that's more strongly in my mind is that Estonia has been putting us to shame with its such an active assistance to Ukraine, such an active stance in national security matters within the European and general security architecture. I mean, we're used to call. Yeah.
Can I ask a quick question? Why is that? Like, why do you think that is? Is it a question of scale?
I think Thomas would be far better suited to answer that, but I think one of the key things
Let
is
me bring
that,
him back to do
I know.
that.
Well,
Yeah.
I know, but this is one of the things that Tomas has like been wonderful about, which is basically answering these types of questions. And I'm sorry again for cutting out before. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, it was your fault.
Yeah. Sorry, but no, but I was really like I had like a whole question that I'd formulated and everything. But Tomas, like, so I want to know, like, do you think that the questions that like the things that Auntie's talking about like are like questions of scale, or do you think that like that
Finland's bigger than Estonia. It should go in the other
We've talked about
direction.
this in a bunch of ways around like we've talked about this in like in ways like obviously like of like Estonia's like ability to kind of scale democracy into like into its voting schematic, for example. And this, yeah, I know. But like
bravery has nothing to do with size, you know.
I
yes,
think what it has to do
Yeah.
with, and it's not strictly Estonia, because actually the number 2 country in contributions percentage of GDP is Latvia, followed by Poland and Lithuania.
It's proximity.
Well, it's not only proximity. It is that we are the countries in the European Union and NATO that have had real experience with the horrors that we see today in Bucha. And while this is kind of something you read about for other people, for those 4 countries, especially because of the Soviets' behavior in them, with mass deportations and horrible crimes in the 1940s, that when we read that, we see it all over again. And the whole impetus of, I mean, what I pushed as a politician when I was one was that happened then, and now it's like different, and we're going to digitize and become modern and get over the past. And then like one of the founders of Skype called me up right after Bucha saying, God, they did this to my grandfather. I mean, the sort of tortures. And so it is like, it brings everything back. And so that makes everyone hard line. Even our prime minister, the magnificent young prime minister we have, incredibly articulate, her mother was the youngest deportee in 1949 to Siberia. I mean, she actually lived around the corner from me here in southern Estonia. But so, I mean, all of this stuff comes back. And that's, I would say, the main reason why these countries are so tough, because it reminds us of all the stuff that you used to hear from your grandmother, you know? I mean, like, they did this, and you go like, yeah, okay, maybe. But this is now, that was then, they're different. And it turns out they're not.
Exactly,
That's
I think.
short.
Yeah, that's exactly the point, that Finns, like, luckily lack this experience. Like, we were lucky to escape from the Soviet Union back in the Winter War. And I think there was a little bit similar, like, West-splaining syndrome in Finland, as there was, for example, in Germany, towards the Germany's eastern neighbors in the Central and Eastern European countries, that Finland had this certain superior attitude towards the Baltics, kind of like we were pretty sure that we knew Russia as well as you can, and that we know what we're doing, and there was more of this, like, we were way less like hawkish maybe, and way less like, I mean, Finland has always been prepared, but there was this, like, especially in the beginning of the 2000s, there was this feeling like, well, maybe we can't truly cooperate. And of course, like, the Baltics would never fall into that kind of illusion.
but also
so,
like cooperate
yeah.
with what? Just like
Russia.
Okay,
Sorry.
yeah, okay, sorry.
I
just
always
making
forget
sure
that it's not like
yeah, I was
clear
like,
to-
I'm like with
yeah.
NATO, with Russia,
Yeah.
like I was just like trying to kind
Sure.
of like follow that down.
Sure.
So, Antti, you had a few specific questions.
I did, yes. So basically, Minna, how do you think the Arctic Council will function after Finland and Sweden have joined NATO?
Well, it will be very interesting because then, like, 7 of 8 members will be NATO members, everyone except Russia, and of course, Russia is not really like Russia has been excluded right now, like from all multinational fora. It's going to be very, very difficult because basically, in the Arctic region, like half of it is basically in Russian territory, and there can be no like meaningful kind of like governance without Russia. Like there has to be some kind of way to like get Russia on board on like climate stuff and so on. But this security situation will of course not allow that for any like time being. So I think it's gonna be very difficult. Maybe there will be some kind of like Nordic Arctic thing like without Russia. I mean, the cooperation will continue without Russia, but it's just not the same in the sense that like the Arctic territory in the Nordic or like Canadian and all the rest, U.S. territory is just like it's only half of half of what Russia has. So it's a real dilemma, and I'm like a bit concerned about that situation in the Arctic because there's so much escalation potential with all the nuclear capacity Russia has in the Kola Peninsula and all that. So very tricky question.
Your next question?
Yeah, so actually, I would like to finish Thomas's question because I think it's much more interesting.
Go for it.
So the Åland Islands, do you think what will happen to its demilitarized status when we join NATO? What do you think?
I think it will be.
So give listeners a little bit of background.
All right.
They know you're not from the Åland Islands. But,
yeah, but they don't know what the islands are.
But they don't know what the
Why?
islands are, or they shouldn't necessarily.
Exactly.
So give a
Yeah,
little bit
that's
of
right.
background to understand the
reminder.
question.
Yeah. So the Åland Islands are a group of islands between Finland and Sweden, and they belong officially to Finland, but they have like autonomy, and they are also a like demilitarized area, and that's been like enshrined in international law. And back when it was decided that they will be part of Finland. And so it's an entirely Swedish-speaking part of Finland, and so honestly, I think that the demilitarized status probably won't be changed because I don't think it's necessary in any way for the Finnish NATO membership, and I trust that the Finnish defense forces are capable of defending Åland Islands in any case, and that there is not necessarily need for like military bases or anything like that. It would maybe depend on like just in case that the Åland Islands like requested it themselves, maybe then that status could be changed. But honestly, I'm also not so well informed about the politics of the Åland Islands, but I'm gonna go there this summer and do some field work. So let's see.
And then your name will make more sense.
Exactly. Then I finally know where it's from. So yeah.
Itamar, the floor is yours. But you have to unmute yourself, sir.
Classic.
Could I have 2 questions as well? All right,
Sure.
great. So my question was about the Swedish-Finnish relationship that you mentioned, and it sounded kind of like historically there was a bit of a client-state relationship in that like Sweden had in the past been kind of dominant to Finland. And I'm curious, how have they kind of patched things up and formed a close relationship when this isn't necessarily the norm?
Well, I'd say that it was more like, I mean, Finland was just part of Sweden and pretty chill about it, actually. Like, there were no like attempts to gain independence during that time. It was not like a very bad time in Finnish history and so on. Actually, the interesting part about it is like Finland switched hands after the Finnish War in 1809. To Russia, when actually France somehow kind of like mediated and helped Russia get.
Whoops.
Oh no.
This is
Is that what happened to me
that is
too?
exactly what happened to you, except you froze, and then did that. This is
It's really frustrating, man. Like, it's not great.
well, we're gonna get her back.
I think that Tomas is like over cackling about his incredible internet connection in Estonia. But Itamar, what was your second question going to be? I'm kind of curious.
Well, I have a third question. Is that your new apartment?
No, it is not my new apartment. But good question. Close. It is close. It is close to my new apartment. But what is the second question?
I wanted to know about the Finnish-Hungarian relation. I don't know if they have a close one, but the Finnish language and the Hungarian languages are kind of islands, and so I'm curious if that has helped them form any relationship.
I wondered that too.
Finnish and Hungarian are extremely distantly related, and I think it is a matter of some dispute among linguists how how long ago they separated, but it's quite a while. They are not closely related like Finnish and Estonian are.
Gotcha.
Okay, Minna seems to be back, and let's get her back.
No shame. No shame. Were you talking shit about me while I was gone?
Of course.
I thought so.
I
figured like Kate, God, she's so unreliable with her internet.
Yeah, internet fails are all. Minna says she's been here the whole time, but I'm having trouble getting her on screen.
I see David H in my lower corner, but I don't see Minna.
Yes, so now I've dismissed her, and now I'm inviting her again. Let's try this once more. Yes, so Tomas says no, Estonian and Finnish are very close, but Hungarian is quite different, and I thought that's what I had said, but it's certainly what I meant to say.
Oh God. Do you ever think that it would be, are you good at geography, Ben?
Reasonably so.
Because one of the things that I'm really bad at is geography, and it's actually like, I think that geography is understated as a mashup of both maps and cultural history. I think that like you could really understand geography as much more about history than like I think most people do. And
okay, I need to talk to Minna for a second.
I know that's why I'm talking. So
no. I'm talking. I need to talk through this system because she can apparently hear me. Minna, I've invited. Oh, there's another. There we go. I think I got her now. Let's see if that worked.
Ingemar, you're gonna have to make it short.
Yeah, because we still have to get to David's question.
We already covered my questions.
All right, then we're gonna get rid of you.
Bye.
Bye.
You can my chapstick from Sweden.
There she is.
Hi. So I was all the time like listening to you guys, but like the videos were gone.
That's what happened.
Yeah, you know, it happens sometimes.
Yeah.
Anyway, you were in the middle of a sentence when you turned into a pumpkin. What? Do you remember what you were talking about?
I think
Oh,
it's
the Swedish-Finnish relationship.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So the point was that basically, like being part of Sweden wasn't such a bad time for Finland, like in retrospect, at least compared to what came after, namely being part of Russia, and being part of Russia for like approximately 100 years prompted actually Finland to attempt gaining independence, and we managed to do that in 1917. And basically, there was this like idea that like we are not Swedes, we will not become Russians, let us be Finns, and that's like the story of Finnish independence. But basically, there are no hard feelings towards the Swedish, like not really. It's like this kind of ice hockey competitive relationship, but like really, there's just like so much in common between the two countries, and so much cooperation. It's just like I don't know. It's just like very tight.
It's interesting that it hasn't developed as a kind of post-colonial relationship in the way that a lot of similar relationships around the world have a kind of post-colonial quality to them that doesn't seem to exist among Nordic countries.
Yeah.
David, you get the last question this evening.
So my question is, Erdogan has threatened twice to veto Finland and Sweden's entry into NATO. Is that threat serious?
So unfortunately, I'm no expert on Turkey or Turkish, like especially domestic politics. My understanding so far is that Erdogan is after a deal, and that it's not only about Finland and Sweden, like not only about like negotiating with bilaterally with Finland and Sweden, but especially the US. That basically they want F-35s or whatever. That's what I've understood so far. And that it has also this like domestic dimension apparently. Like there are elections coming up next year or sometime. And they are kind of like using this whole terrorist support allegations that are like a bit weird. Like I think little brother Sweden didn't do his homework as well as Finland did. Like beforehand, they were not quite as active diplomatically, I think, as Finland was. Like because they were kind of like just trying to catch up with Finland, like the pace of Finland, like actually already striding into NATO. So maybe they didn't quite like catch up with everything, but my impression is that Erdogan is like trying to show some like domestic strength and show that he's a strong leader to be reckoned with, and that he can actually shake up NATO and so on. And I think it's wrong to assume that it's like kind of just Putin telling him to do that or something, because that like gives Russia too much credibility and Turkey too little. I think that Turkey has its own agency in this whole business, and it's playing its own game.
And Turkey and Erdogan always wants something for not getting in the way of something else. And
Exactly.
He knows that the U.S. and NATO needs Incirlik, needs Turkish cooperation on a whole lot of things, and the Turks are the most significant military in NATO other than the United States, at least south of certainly for a general purpose military, except maybe now the Ukrainians who aren't in NATO but eventually will be. He knows he's essential, and so he just says no, I'm not going to allow it, and he'll get something in return for backing down on that, and that's it's obnoxious, but it's a pretty smart play, I think.
You could say that, I guess, yeah.
What has the German reaction been? Your other country.
This was also,
Yeah.
I don't know if Ben got to read it. I texted it to him, but like I was like trying to get back online. But like, I'm really interested in the German reaction to all of this in the midst of like everything that you're talking about.
Yeah. So basically, the Germans are very easily get really easily scared of the nuclear threat. So there has been a lot of like guessing going on, like where could the red lines be for Mr. P, and could Finnish NATO accession be that red line? Well, obviously it isn't. Like Russia's reactions have been pretty tame so far. It looks like they've kind of accepted it. I mean, we do assume that they will do some mean stuff at some point. Like mean stuff is what we talk about in Finland. Like not more, not less. But the Germans are like.
So wait, when you say mean, you mean like average?
Yeah, I mean, we expect some hybrid, like disturbing stuff and hybrid. Yeah, well, all the like Russia has quite some repertoire in the hybrid sphere, so we actually expected a lot more of that already.
Do you
like
understand
this
the double meaning of mean in the U.S. in English, which is like mean is like evil and cruel, and then mean is also average?
Yeah, I mean, that's like actually like a pretty, yeah, now that you pointed out, yeah, it's actually a really good description then, like, because I was kind of like lacking the substance of what like President Niinistö said, how he described it, because it sounds like really funny actually in Finnish, like how he said it, and that has been picked up by all the media to describe.
But the translation is mean stuff.
Yeah,
to describe
mean things like
hybrid warfare, bullying. I'm going to use that in English.
Yeah, so that's like I think that's kind of what I mean is
that it's average.
Also mean, meaning
exactly.
like mean is like it means to like say something like what I intend. And that's what I intend is to basically expose the fact that the word mean has like multiple like valences.
Including in British English, they use it to mean stingy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like
we don't use it that way.
But my point here is that like I was trying to understand how you were using it, and I was like, I think that she's using it in this mathematical sense, which is like average.
I mean, you could also totally, I mean, that could also totally like it actually kind of hits the point. So that's a good one. So the Germans have been like, basically, I have been doing a lot of interviews in Germany because there is first of all like very very little knowledge of of Finland in particular, but also in general of the Nordics. Like it's not really very. Well, there's not a lot of knowledge about the countries and their situation. Of course, there's like even less knowledge about the security policy situation and the security policies of these countries.
That's interesting. They're your neighbors. They're just across the water from you. They should have a sense of what
But Germans don't even really have a proper sense of being at the Baltic Sea, that they also have a stake in the security of this sea. Like we have to start at that, like they just like, that is the amount of like ignoring security policy in Germany. They also have a kind of maritime blindness, I think. So that's old. Yeah, so that's where we start from, and so there's been like a lot of like concern about like where's the red line for escalation? Like when will Putin decide to push the red button, and that's been basically it. And I've been trying to like do a lot of like explaining work, like kind of like calming them down and being like, this won't be it, just don't worry, like it's okay. That's basically been like big part of the reaction in Germany, like this fear of nuclear reaction or retaliation.
It's so interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you. We have kept you up until 1 a.m. It's going to be dawn in a few minutes.
You're such a sweetheart. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah,
thanks a lot for having me.
You're a great American, and come back and join us anytime.
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for your questions.
We will be back on Monday. I have no idea who our guest is going to be.
It's Memorial Day. We'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. We'll do something. We'll say some stuff.
Day?
Yeah. No, that's next week. I think. Yeah, I think.
Okay, sorry.
But that'll be then. This is now. We're not allowed to have fun anymore. But in lieu of fun, we are allowed to have 2 new members of NATO very soon. with God's permission and Erdogan's permission, and that's pretty cool. That doesn't happen every day. So welcome to the club. We'll teach you the secret handshake in a few.